Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar about the migration to 11.0. With me here I have a few people, Björn Jansson, Colin Kopka and Anton Hölscher, who will, we will take different parts of this webinar, each and every one of us. I would like to point out that this is a overview presentation of the content of the migration guide per March 27th or something around there. There is still some updates going on with the migration guide, so note that the migration guide is the correct reference for doing the migration, and the presentation might contain differences from the actual migration guide. Then you should go with the content of the migration guide. Welcome everyone, hope you're doing fine in these awkward times. Most of you, I assume, work from home. Let's see how this works. We will start with compile time changes. Here we have in the prop obj, the method push prop, there has been a change where two additional default parameters has been introduced. A so-called push props env, one for the receiver and one for the pusher. And the reason for this is to increase the possibilities for extension to hook into this process or this flow without having to override, for example, the whole push prop method and copy a lot of things. Next up is DVG export, where we have introduced another env, a snapper export env, which means that it's also for flexibility, so that you can have a flexible set of parameters to different methods. Also, the paper-specific DWG export has been removed entirely and replaced with functionality in the normal DWG export. We're going to look a little bit at the DWG exporter class and the DWG snapper class. So the snapper export env contains all the old arguments and has also an additional argument, or it's a layer set that is used to filter snapper graphics and in that way avoid returning unnecessary data. So this is optional. So the old interface in the snapper class contained different parameters, and the new one only contains the snapper export env. So this is for the method export, and there's an identical change for the method system export. If you are overriding, or if you want to create a specific DWG export behavior for your snapper, then the method export is the one you should override. Yeah, so the paper specific DWG export has been removed entirely. So, and moved into the export DWG dialog so that the papers can now be exported from there. And the export paper DWG dialog class has been removed. So instead of these methods, use, well, I'm not going to say them all, but change into regular user DWG export methods. DWG exporter class has, the constructor has changed because we have added paper space, or rather a sequence of paper spaces. And in this constructor, you can have main space can be null or paper spaces can be null. If you have both null, there will come out, nothing will actually be exported, so that's a bad idea. But you can choose either of these to set the parameters. The parameters export 2D and export 3D only applies to the main space. And there has also been some addition of space in interfaces. So the collect snappers interface and the get view bound interface has gotten a parameter space S. So the DWG snapper class has also got a modification when it comes to the interface. So instead of set env settings, you should now use the apply settings method with a dwg settings env. And with that, I'd like to give the control to Björn.
Yes. Let's see. Yes. So we're gonna go through a couple of sim changes that's gonna affect you in compile time. So the first one is for sim features. Previously, they were kind of referred to through keys. Like in this instance, you have feature provider, and then you pass the string mesh, and you will get mesh. Now we want you to, now this is changed. So instead, this is an enum, and you can access it by calling simfeature.mesh. Otherwise, there's no real change there. Just use the enum, and if you don't, you're gonna get compile time error. This is the same thing, but for components. So again, instead of using a string, use the actual enum. The difference here is that the enum is not field accessible, so you don't have to write sim component ID before. You still can, but you don't have to. So here, for example, we just call node.has component simreps, and it will find the enum value. Continuing, we have changed create reps. Previously, you could just type reps 2D, 3D, or regular reps, and you would get all of them, low to super. We have changed this, so now you explicitly have to decide which details you want. This change has been done because we have seen that sometimes these are used without any actual, people doesn't decide the details they want, so all of the details are created, which of course will cause performance issues. So yeah, now you have to refer to them explicitly decide. Some methods were deprecated in 10.5. These have now been removed. All of them are not listed here, of course, but you can find them in the migration guide, I think. It mostly affects sim handle methods. So in this case, we have myhandle.setMesh. Now instead, we want you to first off put a sim edit around the method call, and now we also want you to call x setMesh instead. There's a few different ways that you can actually begin the edit of the handle or node. It's just, the first one is just a syntax, and then you can say begin edit handle, and you can also begin your edit directly on the node. Also, it's very important that you actually end your edit, but I think you guys already know that. So continue. Yeah, Rolf, you again.
Yes. So we're going over to changes in Abstract Kitchen and Abstract Labs. Here is a field, private field scheme and its getters and setters, and also a method called changed scheme that has been moved from, I think it was from Labs Snapper up to Kitchen Snapper, meaning that, or I think it also existed in other subclasses of Kitchen Snapper, but now everything is, or this is moved up to the main class or the base class called Kitchen Snappers, so that all different abstract Kitchen Snappers as well as all Abstract Labs Snapper will have this, and it's the same. I think this should not really affect you unless you have, no, I don't think really this should affect you, but it's more like this functionality is now available throughout all of these snappers. When it comes to abstract industry, there has been a removal of a concept called pH node. The reason for this is that this concept did not work well or well enough with undo. And as a result of this, there are two classes that has been completely removed. One is aisle manager and the other one is the pH node class. The aisle manager contained quite a lot of methods that is still vital, but all of these methods, or most of them, has the necessary methods have been moved to pH body instead, and the pH node is completely removed. So as a result of this, well, the unnecessary interfaces has been removed. All the relevant methods has been moved from aisle manager to the pH body. As part of this, some method naming has been reviewed and some changes has been done where to achieve a better naming. And in a few cases, there are also some parameter changes. All of these details, I didn't think it was worth just listing them here, but all of these details can be found in the migration guide under abstract industry, so that you can refer to them there. Yes, back to Björn, I think.
Yes. Yes, so there has been some changes in abstract data symbol. Just removed interfaces, so you can see that yeah, here they are. Of course, you're not going to memorize this, but we just wanted to inform you that look this up on the migration guide. Same thing goes for custom data catalog. Here instead we have some modified interfaces. For example, this constructor, which has been changed quite a lot. Just make sure you compile all your packages to see all your changes, see if you get any compile time errors. Data catalog also has yeah, a few removed interfaces and some more removed interfaces, and also one renamed interface. We also have some changes in CMSTD print. Various methods or functions in there previously did not include world as a parameter. Instead, they used session.mainWorld. This has been changed. Now, when you call one of these methods, you will have to include the world, and you can pass session.mainWorld if you want to, or any other world. The reason we have done this is to kind of improve our ability to do multi-drawing and multi-world development, and improve the already existing one. And these methods were blocking us to do from doing that before. So just a convenient thing. So now we move over to runtime and behavior changes. Now Anton is going to talk a bit about view clips.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Nice. I think I should have control now. I'm just going to try that. Yeah, seems to be working. Great. So we've been working on a project called View Clips, and it is a new system that will be completely replacing the 2D viewports. And we've done it since we want to utilize the red engine that's working underneath. And it in turn gains huge performance improvements. So one beta user said it takes him 4 hours to do 12 hours work now with the new view clips. So that's very exciting. And we also want to make it more modular and easier to add custom behavior to the view clips than viewports, because previously you had to extend the viewport and add all your functionality in that class. Now it's much easier, but more on that later. So old viewports, since this is replacing them, we will stop having viewports in CT from 11.0 and forward, and old viewports will be automatically converted to view clips. So in all ways you can load a viewport, say favorites, papers, and from old drawings, they will be automatically converted to view clips. And as you can see in this image comparison here, some slight changes have been made. So for instance, the scale text is a bit bigger now. And it seems like the frame is also a little bit different. So if you have any PDF diff tests, you will most likely have to redo those references. So I mentioned that it's much easier to customize the behavior, and that is accomplished through something called companions. And companions are snappers that connect to view clips and add custom graphics or modifies the content of the view clip. So in this image, you can see the view clip insertion buttons are the 2D and 2D empty in the second card. And underneath those, there are some fancy icons, and those are different types of companions. So if I play this video here, if I press one of them here, I press the scale, an animation starts, and I can apply them as such. So that one applied a frame, and this one alters the graphic. So they can do a lot of stuff with the wormhole, and it's completely modular, so you can use any combination of these companions you'd like without any complex settings and that kind of stuff. So if you are working or have a very specific viewport in your current project, some migration have to be done. And I will have 2 webinars this coming Friday, one at 10 a.m. and one 4 p.m. And this will contain a demo including how to create new companions, something called edit mode, which is how you alter the area you're looking at, how to do some custom conversion and more stuff. So if you want to do some specific viewport stuff, make sure to visit one of those webinars. That's all for me. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Anton. So we have some further runtime changes. The first one is, I think if we go back one step, prop depth adjusted have been changed quite a lot. We have removed very messy conditional code, which in turn speeds up most common cases. However, we do keep the original adjusted in but it's called deprecated adjusted now. We also have a deprecated put, and we have a compare put, which runs both and the old and new version, so you can pinpoint what potentially differs. We have tested this quite a lot, and it seems like everything is working correctly, but you never know. So if you notice any issues with this, please try to do the compare put and see what differs for you. Continuing, we also have added a widening conversion to prop depths. So what that is an automatic conversion from one type to another. And this is already available in the rest of CEM, but we didn't have it before for props. So you can see.
I think we have a question.
Oh, all right.
Okay, maybe it was a mistake. I don't know.
All right.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
raise your hand again.
If you have any questions, you can also just unmute and ask it out loud. Just interrupt us, or use the raise hand features. That's completely fine as well. I'll try to keep an eye out for that one. Well, anyway.
I'm sorry. That was an accident. Thanks.
Okay, that's fine. Well, anyway, you can see here in the first example that we have a variable called a class called T1, and we have an instance of it called Z. In that we have a prop called W, which is a double, and we assign it to be 1 using the new system. So the value becomes 1, and the class is still a double. If you see below that, we have the same scenario. We do the same thing, but instead we use the deprecated put, so the old behavior, and then we put a 1. In the output, you can then see that this throws an error because it will interpret the 1 as an integer, and you're trying to assign a double. So it doesn't do any conversion there. So instead, you actually have to cast a double. But yeah, so that has changed. There's a list of available conversions on the migration guide. So please see that. If you have any ideas for other conversions, please contact dev support, and they will try to help you out in getting that in. But we think that those that are available now should be cover the most common cases.
So there has we had an issue in but perhaps you could call it a glitch in the calculation dialog. When you start a new instance of CT Designer and you place an object in the drawing, you bring up the calculation dialog. You have a ton of different columns visible by default, and you have to scroll back and forth, and then eventually we'll decide to hide quite a lot of these columns. But this has, well, basically there are too many columns initially visible there. So this has been addressed in 11.0 through a few different ways. First of all, the initially visible core columns has been reduced to these 7 columns. I do not remember how many they were that was initially visible in 10.5, but there were quite a few more than these. So these are the ones that we have thought is the most important. Then if you in 10.5 turned on an extension which had abstract or used a data symbol, all of the 15 columns their 15 columns were initially also visible, but this has changed. So by default, these are not visible anymore. So there's a number of them here listed that they are not visible by default anymore. Quite a simple change, but I think our users will appreciate it. And the last thing we've done is to introduce a voting system. This means that if you run multiple extensions, these extensions have a say in what columns should be visible. So each extension can upvote the visibility for a specific column. And I think what it says here, it's limited to 10 columns. I believe that is that only 10 columns will be additionally visible through this system. But the point is that each extension should, in its start method, do this voting if they want to. And then as a result of this, the user will get the most relevant columns. So for reference, the part tag columns, there are no public part column classes. So you have to specify the keys, like it says here, upvote part column visibility, and then you have to use a key like that.
Yes. Hi, Rolf.
Hi.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Sriram here.
Hi, Sriram.
So yeah, so you are saying like for each and every extensions, we can have a maximum column set it by ourselves. Let's say like I have 2 products coming from the different extensions which have a different part column. Then how it will get consolidated in the calculation view?
I think that the 10 columns that has gotten the most votes will be the ones that are visible. So if you have many different extensions or 2, and the votes come in a slightly different manner, then the ones that has gotten the most votes will win, so to say. I am not really sure if there is a limitation on how many columns each extension can vote for example. But as a rule of thumb, I assume that each extension should upvote the columns that they find is most important.
So,
it will be limited to 10 columns overall.
Okay.
To still keep it reasonably small amount of.
Okay.
Yep.
So, which is not mandatory. So, what if you are not voting? So it will come as default, right?
Yeah. Then if I assume that if no votes has been casted, I assume that no additional columns will be initially visible. I mean, they're still there and available to the users, but they are not initially visible. For reference, I mean, you would probably want to know what the columns are, so you could have a look at these 3 different files that contains the core and the abstract part columns for your reference. And with that, I think we are back to Björn.
Yes. Yeah. So we have some more sim changes. First off with sim props. We have changed it now so keys that are prefixed with the underscore are reserved for internal use. So you can see in the example here in the second bullet point that local bound will now instead be called underscore local bound. And what we want you guys to do is to not use the underscore before your name. But also, just to clarify, this is only for sim props, not regular props or any kind of other props, just sim props. And this shouldn't make any real difference for you guys.
Hi, this is Sriram here again.
Yeah.
So this is restricted only with APIs, right? Not with any field names.
Yeah. Yes. So we have also removed a geometry flag called sim geometry key. This also shouldn't be an issue for you guys because you should use the sim node.has geometry. I think that's the normal case. Has geometry previously kind of checked the sim geometry key, but now instead that's removed. So please instead just call has geometry, and that's still fast and everything. So you can ignore that. And there has been some changes to sim stretching. Previously we had 2 parameters, which was called stretching EP. EP stands for endpoint and also a wanted length. Stretching EP was a bool and wanted length was a double. This worked well for most cases, but if you change the bool between different stretch operations, previously you had to keep track of how much had been stretched in each direction, meaning stretching the endpoint or not the endpoint. Now instead this has been changed so that we still have the wanted length parameter, but now we also have a SP offset, which is a double. So how it works now is that the endpoint is stretched first, so we achieve the wanted length, and then the offset is added, is used to adjust everything so that everything is in the right place. So this shouldn't be much more difficult or any more difficult at all, and it should be much more easier to use. Worth noting is that the old CMSIM files will still use the original stretching behavior, but as soon as you load it into Model Lab, it will be translated to use new parameters. So take that into account. This again shouldn't, I don't think that should cause any issues for you guys, but it might. Yes, so JSON, we now support JSON with 64-bit integers. And this is great, but we just want to inform you guys that in the class JSON_int, there's a method called int. There's also a new method now called int64. Int64 is always safe to call, I believe, but int, yeah, it's also safe to call, but you have to verify the value after you retrieve it from that method. You can see in the example that there's a develop mode check for if the value is bigger than the maximum int value, like the 32-bit value, or it's below the lower, the min value of 32-bit ints. This of course because the range is for 64 bits ints is much larger than 32-bit ints. So just make sure that you have a check for that before you actually use it somewhere. Yes, and we have made some changes to article views in space in the package CM Core Calc. This previously was causing an error because we used space.put auxiliary. So what that will do is that it will put the article views directly into the auxiliary data without converting the class or anything. So then you will have a dependency. That drawing will require that extension, the extension for that for the class, which might not always be what we want. So instead, we now call put auxiliary object, which converts the object into a memory stream and then saves it in the auxiliary data. So again, this shouldn't be any issues for you guys unless you try to access the calc article views key in the auxiliary data directly. If you do that, you need to unpackage it using get auxiliary objects. So then you retrieve the memory stream and cast it back to an object if you can. But other than that, this should be an issue, and it should probably help in reducing drawing dependencies. Back to you, Rolf.
Yes. So we have a few corrections, or in this case, it's a method that didn't work well that has been deprecated. It was the equal method for boxed values. It didn't actually produce correct results in 10.5 and earlier, so it has been completely replaced by the almost similar function eq_box value that is corrected, or is correct, has been correct all the time. eq_box will still remain, but I encourage you to change any usage of that into eq_box value instead, since this is now deprecated. We have also made a correction in a method perpendicular. It resides in orientation and in orientation F. It didn't work, or it did produce incorrect results in 10.5 and earlier. This has now been corrected. We have in 11.0, we have improved the consistency of the inspect or Alt-I command in Emacs. Previously, if you had a file that was saved in UTF-16, it was very inconsistent. But even with UTF-8 files, it could be some inconsistencies in it, in the behavior. For example, if you inspected something, it didn't always, you weren't always moved to the target. You had to do that manually. This should have been improved or corrected, and there has also been other small adjustments to improve consistency more. I hope that this will increase increase the behavior of this one, and that you will like it. Abstract elevations. There has been yet another correction where previously it didn't work well with favorites if you copy pasted it or in collaboration, because the elevation space or elev space was unfortunately reset and the snappers in it was lost. So this has now been corrected, and from the developers there, they assume that there's quite a lot of customization code out there that probably address this problem and to handle it, and so you should be able to remove that customization code now since this has been corrected now. And with that, I would like to give the word to Colin. I will.
So I'm going to be going over the category changes that are coming with 11.0 and Abstract Office, and then in general, the changes with Abstract Office. So we're going to start off going over into a bit of detail on the changes with categories, specifically what has changed and what does migration look like with these changes. From there, we'll go into a little bit about the actual migration for Abstract Office, and then discuss a little bit more about some changes in Fika. All right, so what has actually changed with the categories? The categories in Abstract Office, they've been pretty inconsistent for many years now, and it's been a pain point for users. So we've now made the categories a lot more specific and consistent. So we should have a much better user experience. And these changes have been made with our partners in the office industry, specifically the F5, which is just a group of 5 major office furniture manufacturers who are tasked with establishing standards for extensions in that industry. And the list was made mostly from them and has been implemented by us. And due to the extensive changes with the categories, there will be some migration work that needs to be done to adopt these. Most of the work is going to be pretty simple, just changing out some of the code to use for using the new ones. But I expect for larger extensions, this may be a little bit tedious. So I kind of want to show the difference between the categories that are coming from Abstract Office. So here on the left, we have the current categories. As you can see, they're pretty kind of vague and generic, and they're also inconsistent. Some of them have storage and text as subcategories. And that would just be panels, storage, and overheads, and work surfaces. Tables, for some reason, only has had text, has not had a separate symbol category. And now, seeing here on the right, here are all the categories from Abstract Office that have been added. So you can see that we do still have kind of these generic parent categories, but we have a lot more subcategories that get into much more specific products. And with all of these categories, we have symbol and we have panel number text and generic text as subcategories for all of these. So it is a lot more consistent going forward. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the code changes that need to be done. Most of the work to migrate to the categories are going to be through some code changes that you'll need to do. This involves changing the symbols being used throughout your extensions to match the new ones. Primarily, this will be changes to snappers, any subclassing of item tags that you may have, and also your view modes that you register. But to help with this, we've made constants for all of the new categories in Abstract Office, so it should be pretty easy to switch over and also find all the places where they're getting used going forward. And so, yeah, some of the methods that will need to be updated on your snappers, your 2D and 3D will need to get updated if you're calling out specific categories or for layering graphics, and also the add system categories to method on your snappers. That's where most of these categories automatically get added. There's a similar method for item tag called system categories. And then any category view modes that you have in register, you'll need to update those, and any DWG layer infos that you use for your DWG exports, that will also need to be updated. All right. And if you have any custom categories in your extensions and you're planning on maybe removing or changing those, we have a system in place for doing that. Basically, you'll just need to register what the old category was, what the old symbol was, and what the new symbol is going to be. This object will keep track of all the mappings, and when it'll process the snappers, the item tags, user create view modes, viewports, and also isometric elevations to update them. And this is going to happen in loaded 1 on those objects. And all of the mappings for abstract office categories have already been set up. So you'll only need to register ones for your custom categories that you're adding in your extensions. And this migration functionality is only needed to handle user applied categories. Any of the ones that come in automatically, that'll get handled through the code changes. Okay. And if you're planning on, oh, there we go. Sorry. Right here on the right-hand side, we have an example of the mappings. So this is more or less what we see in Abstract Office. So the left there is the old category, the old symbol, and on the right are the new ones. So this is in so this is an Abstract Office, so this can be referenced from there. And to do the full registration of your mappings, you'll need to provide the package that the old category was registered with, the version that this migration is going to be happening with, and then the mappings themselves. And all that will get passed into a function called put category migratory map. And we have an example of that in Abstract Office that can be referenced. And then when the object actually does its migration, it's going to call a method on the object called migrate categories. The first pass of the migrator is only going to handle any categories from your custom packages, and it uses the package from the class to determine what mappings to use. And then if any of those fail, they'll be processed through a migrate category failures method to give you kind of a chance to manually handle those on a per snapper basis. And be aware that any core abstract mappings that happen, we'll go through this as well, through the failures. This is to give snappers the opportunity to adjust those if need be. So if you don't like or you don't think that the mapping for, maybe storage is correct in Abstract Office for this product, you can, on that snapper, have it switch that over to a different category of your choosing. And here on the right, we have some examples. So at the top is the actual registration function call there that we're using in Abstract Office. So providing that package, a version number, a version, and then the map itself. And then here we have what loaded 1 looks like on Snapper. So for objects loaded in that are coming into 11.0, they'll get migrated. And you can see that migrate categories method on the Snapper, what it's doing there. All right, so I'm going to go over a bit on the migration of Abstract Office, what's coming in 11.0. For the most part, it's mostly been kind of smaller fixes here, there. Nothing too crazy or noteworthy, and all of this is in the actual migration guide itself. That should be up to date as of, I want to say, Monday of this week. There are a few of these changes I do want to kind of point out. First, animation try-snap on work surface has been made to actually return whether it was successful or not. Previously, I believe it would always return false, which made it impossible to check whether things actually snapped when overriding this method in your subclasses. We also removed the arbitrary 1-inch offset for the left and right snap on panel frame. This should make it not a requirement to actually override where those connectors get positioned. And there is load code. If you were relying on that functionality, there is load code in Abstract Office to handle that automatically. For data-driven Office, we moved the initialization of data for the data surface classes to initialize work surface. And then for work surface path members, we're taking the prop data that we introduced in 10.5, and we're passing that now all the way through the connector creation process to allow for more flexibility and customization with that system. So with this, it would be possible to set a connect rule on your actual path member itself, and then apply that connect rule automatically in your connectors without having to specifically call out the ID. And then briefly on Fika Office, again, it's mostly been kind of fixes and cleanup. The one thing I did want to specifically call out is that we added a example of wall snap, of feature snapping with walls. So we added a wall start to there. That'll be in 11.0. So take a look at it if you're looking to do wall snapping for the first time or looking to update that functionality. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about some of the kind of the future things that we're looking to do in Abstract Office and Fika. So again, we want to continue to implement and add support for G2 props and animations, specifically in Abstract Office. We want to also enhance Data Office to be a better foundation for working with data, and that's both for product parents and static products. The code we have in there works well for static products, but we want to kind of expand that and create a bit more of a standard for these classes and for working with data in Office. We're looking to start data driving the Fika extension. We already have a catalog for it. We just need to start development of that. And with this, we're still deciding whether it's going to replace the current non-data Fika, or if it'll be available alongside, or if it'll be maybe a develop only option. We're also like to do some enhancements with the custom SIF to make it a little more robust, potentially easier to use, and have it work with more extensions all around. And then finally, this is something that I'm kind of looking to do, and that's to deprecate the supported work surface and skin frame classes. And the reasoning behind this is that, these classes were there to initially tidy up the panel frame and work surface base classes, and to kind of give more entry points into your product development. However, because of these classes, we've had to duplicate code more often. So anything we do for work surface, we have to then duplicate that functionality for the supported work surface, and same for the panel frame and the skin frame classes. And so the main kind of barrier of this is those systems that could add in those classes, that being the skin and tile systems, as well as the support systems. Currently looking to kind of reevaluate how we're doing those, and kind of develop a new way of doing that, with the intention of this new system to fully support new and future products and code that we're adding into the core level. For example, having supports that would work a lot better with data, and can also be components or snappers or any other object for that matter. Want this to ultimately also be easier for developers to come into, to kind of reduce that barrier of entry for, implementing supports, for example. So I'm currently working on the updated support system. It's still going through some kind of code review and enhancements. So I don't really have anything to show right now with it, but so far the feedback that's coming off it has been good, and we've been getting some really good ideas. So I think it's going to be a good improvement overall. And with that, of course, the current systems will still be there. Those will not be removed. So we will still be supporting any extensions that are relying on them, but they will be, kind of put off to the side. They won't be as front and center.
So from Colin's very big presentation on what has been changed in Abstract Office, we're going to a bit smaller changes in Abstract Industry. There are a few animations there that has been given additional animation properties. So in case you have extended those to add those animation properties, you may be able to remove that in your current implementations. And this concerns for the three animations here, it concerns number of racks and number of rows. And for this last one, that is usually referred to as super stretch. We have added total length and total rack count. Shouldn't really affect you unless you have already added these or some similar animation property that you now could remove. And then it's Björn.
Yes. Let's see. Yeah, we just wanted to inform you about a project that's being released in 11.0. It's basically an overhaul of the schemes, the prop schemes. So there has been some very big improvements. First off, we have the first change is that the schemes will now only require one dialogue, and that dialogue will instead have context switching, which is really nice. You also have a handy selection tool, which keeps the selection history, and you can kind of bookmark selections and so on. And while changing scheme, you can also see the effects of a snap-on in the preview window. These are just some of the small, well, not small, but some of the improvements. There are many more. You can see in the picture that the UI is a bit different and cleaned up. But all of this will result in some needed migration. Unfortunately, it's too much to cover in this presentation, so please attend the schemes webinar, which is on Friday, I believe. I can't remember if it's 1 or 2, but you should be able to find that information on the webpage. So,
sorry to interrupt here. This is Sriram. If
Yep.
I'm not wrong, that is not 7th of April.
Oh, it might be. Actually, I don't know really. I thought it was this Friday. But yes, you guys should double check that, and I recommend that you attend that because, as I said, there's a lot that has been changed and a lot of like new cool features that you can use that are not.
All right. Thank you all and for attending this. I hope this has been helpful for you in your upcoming migration. And I would like to wish you all to stay safe and hope that you you find working from at home working out for you. And well, have a good day.
Rolf,
yes,
yeah, sorry,
Sure.
like one last question. So
Yes.
now the version 11.0 beta is available, development version is available for us?
I think so, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you advise us to work our extension against version 11.0 beta or version 11.0?
I think you should start the migration with the beta.
Beta, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because otherwise you will have to do everything under time pressure.
Sure. Yeah, gotcha. And also like one final question. So I think May 18th is the migration release. So by considering the present situation, are you guys like foreseeing the like postponing any release date? So because we can align our release with that.
I don't think we are postponing anything. We have,
Okay.
No.
haven't we postponed or at least rescheduled the code freeze a bit,
Okay.
Björn? But that's about it.
Yeah, the code freeze has been reduced, so it's smaller, but there will still be 4 weeks for migration, and I believe the release date is the 18th of May.
Thanks for your information. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Any more questions? Okay, then. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll talk to you later.